Here at Rivalry, guys, we're really excited to help bring you content that is really, really awesome and shows how passionate everyone is about esports. And, I mean, if we're talking about passionate about esports, who else is going to come to mind other than Nahaz? So, welcome, Nahaz. I want to announce we're sponsoring him. He's going to become kind of part of the Rivalry family here. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to finally be able to announce this. This is something that we've been working on for a long time. I know we were chatting beforehand, Nessa, about, you know, I've sort of taken this break from full-time academia to pursue some interest in esports. And one of the things I've wanted to do for some time is to be able to bring more analytical content, more of these YouTube videos. But, you know, again, this is something that I'm doing for a living. I got to be able to feed my family, and Rivalry it's a great brand in the space. I spent a lot of time thinking about who I wanted to partner with, and I wanted to partner with a brand that I saw out there, both working with other content creators who I had a lot of respect for and who I really think wants to bring great products to the space, not just, you know, cash in with a lot of people out there, and there's certainly a lot of money to be made cashing in on the growth of esports. But I think what Rivalry is doing is both sustainable and very good for the ecosystem.
Yeah, and we're glad to be able to work with people who trust us, and I mean, for me, just create awesome content. I've known you for years. I've consumed everything, and honestly, the prospect of having more stats don't lie. Like, come on, bring it on.
And that's, to me, what the number one thing that I liked about the partnership is nobody came to me and said, hey, we want you to do stuff on betting. We want you to do stuff on this and stuff on that. It was we like the content that you already do, and we're interested in sponsoring it. And that's a great appeal for me. You know, we may, depending on where things go, do some stuff differently, but I didn't want necessarily somebody to come in and tell me I had to do Nahaz's picks of the week if I didn't want to. All right. You know, we may go that direction, but I think it's important that it's going to evolve based on what people want to see. And because that to me is the key to content.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've had enough sellout. I'm glad everybody loves Rivalry.
There you go.
But for what we're really here to get your story, to introduce you to our viewers, and then kind of just give people an update on what you're doing. So, sure. As you mentioned, you know, you took a little bit of a break from academia and went full-time esports. So I want to rewind, if you can, and kind of think about the steps that led to that jump. I mean, that's a pretty big jump to make. Like, what was there like a key point, or was it just a culmination of things?
Well, I think you probably can relate to this better than most, that academia is a very particular lifestyle, and it's something that's very easy to get burnt out on. I had a great opportunity. I left a place 6 years ago at the University of Chicago that to me is still the best place on the planet to study economics. I still will tell everybody who will listen how amazing a place that is to be. I left it for a great opportunity. I got to start my own master's degree program in financial economics, run it for a few years. It was awesome, but it's also a very different challenge, navigating the sort of university bureaucracy, fighting some battles that are really about the long term and adding value for the student that don't necessarily show up on a dean's balance sheet or income statement, and that'll burn you out. And I did get a little bit discouraged. That's not to say anything negative about where I was, but at the same time that was happening, I was getting interested in esports. I was doing Dota events, and I saw, not only in the Dota space but across a lot of games, some opportunity to create analytical content, to partner with people on some consulting jobs, unfortunately most of which I can't talk about, but the business side of things as well as the analytical side of things. There are a lot of people talking about big data, and that's great, but there are also a lot of people that just are realizing this industry is growing very fast. It's got a lot of growing up to do in a very short period of time. And I do have some business experience. I mean, I taught stats, but I taught stats at a top 5 business school. And that is an important distinction.
Yeah, and I mean, they naturally integrate. And so we've definitely seen you used kind of in a lot of different ways, whether you're brought in purely analytical, we've even seen you do some hosting. And then at TI, you had this whole, pre-game mini montage Nahaz Spotlight. Who came to you with that idea? Where did that come from?
It was actually Bruno that came to me at the end of the Super Major with the pitch for the thing, and he got about to the second sentence. I think he finished the first before I said yes, because as it so happened, this was something that I had pitched to a couple other tournament organizers a few years ago. I actually think ironically, I think if MLG had stayed in Dota, that this is something that I would definitely have convinced them to do. I think we probably would have gotten to do it with ESL eventually. But if you've been at Dota lands, you've been at any esports lands, and one of the things that happens is stuff just gets crazy, and you go into lands with great plans, and stuff just doesn't pan out. I mean, I almost did the weatherman stuff a long time ago too. So it was an opportunity to do something that I wanted to try for a long time on the biggest stage in esports, in my opinion, and it worked out great. I had a ton of fun. It was very. It's something that if I do it again, I'll enjoy it a lot more the second time, because it's a very different type of prep from the panel, and I burned myself out a little bit at TI doing the prep for it, but it was a ton of fun, and it was thrilling to see how well it was received by the community.
But you didn't. So you may have burned yourself out, internally, but you kept your voice this time, which has been a struggle at some other tournaments.
Well, I was, and it's partly, I sometimes envy guys like Red Eye, because Red is, in my opinion, he's the best in the business at what he does, but he's got this on-camera persona that's very different from his off-camera personality. With me, what you see is what you get, man. And I mean, I'm up there on the panel gushing, and I go right backstage, and Navi and Fnatic are playing, hour and 30-minute game, and I'm screaming my head off. Turns out that's not a great idea. So yeah, I dialed it back a little bit.
Well, like I said, that's when I said Rivalry wants to work with passionate people. That's you. You are the name that embodies that.
Well, I thank you. You know what? There are a lot of things that want to be known. I'll take that one in a heartbeat.
That's good. I'll keep that one. Okay, so TI was awesome. The community loved it, which has not always been the reception. Let's be honest in regards to the comment you just made. What do you think has been kind of the best tournament to work with or be a part of? Like, is it ESL because it's slick and highly produced and beautiful? Was it TI because you had this very unique content? Was it Dream League because it's Dream League? Like what tournament feels the best for you?
It's hard to rank them, because I think they're all memorable for different reasons, which is a little bit of a cop-out, but I'll tell you a little more about it, right? The Manila Major was something that I still it still gives me goosebumps thinking about it, frankly, because we had a green room backstage as talent, and you could feel the stadium shake during the draft. People just went crazy, and you as a panelist, right? You're off that series, and you're like, oh, okay. I as you can tell, I hate sitting still, right? I want to be on these events. I want to be on the panel every time, but you sat back there and you realized just how into it people were getting even before the games would begin, and it was such a thrill. Those SEA fans, I mean, they're to me, I relate so well to that level of passion that they've got in that region. ESL won Birmingham this last year. Was so freaking awesome because it was the closest thing. I grew up with traditional sports crowds. I grew up as a Cardinal fan watching games at Busch Stadium. I went to college at Duke watching college basketball in Cameron Indoor Stadium, and being at Birmingham with that English sports crowd and the beach balls, that was the first time in esports that I felt like it's a traditional stadium crowd, and some of the rivalries really on display. I thought that was so amazing, and I'm excited. That's an event I will beg, borrow, and steal to get that event. ESL, if they don't hire me, I'm begging a plane ticket over there, because I think that's going to be special again. And obviously, you talk about the TIs. TI is always a mixed bag, because it's such a great event, but the experience as talent, as a player, there's so much pressure. Everything moves so quickly, but at the same time, everything that happens is so significant. Everything that happens is something that we're going to be talking about for years afterward. And that's, you can't replicate that.
So what would be your dream? You said you love being on a panel, but you've also liked doing this consulting. You love being in Southeast Asia, but you love, the UK traditional sports crowd. If you could create your perfect role, the perfect tournament, what is your dream for Dota if in 2 years you could build something to be a part of? What would you be building?
I would actually love to do I'd love to do a slightly different role at each event. I like to host. I really do. I don't think I'm nearly as good at it as Red is, but I think that, he's been doing it for 10 years and that guy works and prepares. He puts in more hours than any other talent in the scene. I don't think people know that. And that's the kind of thing, I learn a lot from him every event we do together. I would love to explore more of that side, but we got Shiva in the scene, who's also very, very good in that role. I love traditional panel. I actually love being on the panel with pro players. Like I just kind of got pulled in. I got roped into doing the roped into, right? I mean, die for this opportunity. I actually got to be on the panel for the grand finals of TI, and it just so happened that I pulled SVG and Arif, MSS, on the panel, and I mean, we got off that panel, and we were pulling at each other, going at each other for like 20 minutes into the game. We were still going at it. Like these guys. I mean, that's part of the really neat thing about these lands is that the talent, the fans, the players, everybody just wants to talk about Dota. And once you get into being in a conversation at Dota with these guys is like being in a game of Dota. Nobody's leaving and nobody's giving ground. And everybody's raging at each other. it's
SVG especially. He's a character. He has very little on screen time, but man, he's incredible.
Well, he needs to be. He and MSS. They need to be. Those are in the small set of people. Pile I Die, by the way, is another guy who a great decision by PGL to invite him for KL. He's a guy that I've tried to get more up there on the panels. These guys have a lot to say. They think about it's kind of the thing. When you're a captain, right, you have all this time that is sort of sunk into analyzing the opponents, doing scouting. A lot of these non-captain support players, they have thought a lot about nuances of the game that you don't hear talked about very often otherwise.
So I want to shift gears a little. So your dream is to do everything. So that's, we've got that. Nahaz wants to do everything, hire him for everything. But I want to talk a little bit about that hiring process. So every year at TI, there's a thread of, oh, this person didn't get shafted. Or when a big, tournament happens, there's the talent invite list and people are sad to not see their favorite there. And so I really want to work to almost demystify the invite system and how tournaments are run and everything, because I don't think people understand. Yeah, well, I don't think people understand the reality of budgets or where things come from. So I just want to say, can you talk about when you work for ESL, was that, someone coming to you? Did you go to that? How does this work generally just for talent? And we can talk 2 years ago and we can talk about now, because I know that it changes. It's not much different.
It's a crapshoot. It always is. And I think people, I got hired by ESL for a number of events because I had a good relationship with some people at ESL, starting with James Lampkin. When I did my first event for them, it was like my second ever LAN was ESL 1 in Frankfurt in 2015. And I had a great time. Like James Lampkin had a very sort of different approach to running events when he was on the production side. He was sort of my door's always open kind of guy, where as talent, I could go back into the production room. I could be like, hey, we're going to talk about this on panel. Could we have a graphic for that? Or could we, and they'd bounce off ideas off me and vice versa. But again, a lot of that was because ESL had a lot of people there. That was a very experienced team.
Mm-hmm.
And as esports has grown, yes, a lot of money comes in, but companies like ESL are also doing a lot of different events and a lot of different titles at once. Budget gets leaner, and it's not just the talent that you see in front of the cameras that matters. It's the talent backstage, and you're all of a sudden you're working with production crews who are brought in, like Hamburg last year is a great example. Like, we're working with this production crew in Hamburg last year, in 2017, that they're a TV quality production crew. I mean, they have tons of talent, but they haven't done esports before.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just adds to a little bit of the chaos behind the scenes. And eventually ESL's goal is they're always playing the long game, and they're always going to get to, I think you saw it this year, that same crew did Hamburg. I believe that same crew did Hamburg this year, and it was way up here. But there's always so much influx from event to event, and it is about who you know. Especially this year, that's one of my big complaints about the DPC season last year, is that it is not all about being talent in Dota. Is not all waiting by your phone or waiting by your Skype or Discord. It is about forming relationships with people. And last year, when the DPC schedule was announced, the event locations weren't always announced, but the full menu of events and organizers was announced. So you could go to ESL and say, hey, I see you have an event here. You could go to Star Ladder, say, hey, and you could start to get an idea of okay, who's going to want me, who's going to not. This year, we have no idea who's doing event to event. And it's very hard as talent. If you miss out on an event or two, it's very hard to get to the next one, because you're not sure who to call. And that was the other thing, unfortunately, that happened with me at TI, is that I spent a lot of time on prep and not enough time on networking at this TI. And that, again, just to be as transparent with people that are looking at potential careers in an industry like this, that matters. You've got to be out there. When you get to a LAN, a lot of people look at it as, oh, it's my opportunity to be on camera in front of a lot of people. It's not just that. It's your opportunity to get to know a lot of people face to face and make the case. Being good on camera is great, but there are a lot of people that are good on camera. You got to make the case why you are somebody that is going to be great to work with, why you are somebody that is going to make the show better off camera as well as on. And
unfortunately, the prep you're doing does make the show better, but takes you away from your networking.
It does, but that's the thing. So, and I'm very open with people about that. I'm very open with. I'm not Ben Merlini Wu, man. I'm not up there on the panel just oozing Dota knowledge out of my pores. To be effective as a panelist, I have to spend a little bit more time in preparation, looking at numbers. I have to study the individual teams, and I think as talent, right, as a caster, as whatever you want to be, what you have to ask yourself. People all the time frame the discussion as, well, this guy's better than some other guy. And I think that's a horrible mistake. I think as talent, what you got to ask yourself is, what can I bring to the table that other people don't bring? What's my, orthogonal contribution for you math geeks out there? Like, what am I going to add to the show that wouldn't otherwise be there? Right. And for me, I think that has to do with the time I spend in prep.
Which, I mean, we clearly see that come through on the panel.
Well, thank you.
You always know. Yeah, you always know what you're talking about. You have insane stats. You definitely seem like someone who preps a lot. So I want to touch on, you said last year with the DPC, they announced the schedule and you could go to organizers. Now, there's been some discussion, I actually don't think enough discussion, about one little organizer, GESC.
Right.
They were supposed to have 3 or 4 minors, but they ended up only doing 2, right?
Right.
Yeah. So did they come to you, or
yes.
Did you? Okay. And
they
how
came
did that
to
conversation go? How did that relationship?
They came to me, and they had a great team, and they had a lot of very passionate people, and they were shooting for the moon. They invited most of the top tier Dota talent. They were very ambitious in terms of their talent budget. And they ran those 2 events, and as things often do, the money dried up, and there are a lot of people, including myself, that are owed talent fees, and a lot of teams that are owed. And in the latter, in fact, obviously from a selfish point of view, I'd love to be paid, but
Mm-hmm.
the teams is a bigger deal because, of course, that there's Valve money there too. But look, a lot of I talked to Oscar, the head of that particular organization, I believe it was about 10 days ago, and one of the things that came up is there was some talk about what he was doing, and some people expressed concern that it was looking like he was embarking on a new project without settling the GSC debt. Well, the thing people need to understand is that this is it's if you've worked in another industry with VCs, say venture capitalists involved,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually not that uncommon that you have to clear costs from a previous project in order to embark on the next. I don't think there's anything nefarious happening with GESC. I really don't. I do, though. People need to be aware. It's hard to get paid in this industry, and that's one of the things. For example, I picked up a spring course at Georgetown. I'm going to be teaching part time. Even though I still do hope to be doing events and of course producing content, but people need to understand that it's harder than it should be to get paid, and it's not necessarily because people are shysters and screwing you. It's because there are a lot of people that are very ambitious in esports and have a lot of great ideas, and things don't work out for them. And unfortunately, a lot of people bear the brunt when stuff like that happens. It's not necessarily about people being dishonest. It's about that's the way stuff works. And frankly, I say a lot of good things about Valve. I do think there needs to be a little bit more due diligence on Valve's end. I do think that that it is a little bit more on them. The last year or two, we need to get out of this perception that it's not correct, but there is some truth to it. The perception that Valve sort of collects their money 2 weeks a year at TI, and the other 50 are kind of anything goes. That's not fair to Valve to put things that way, but there are things that do need a little bit more policing, a little bit more vetting. And the GSC situation, I think that's going to happen with events. I'd like to see it. The thing that I used to tell my students is you look at the trend, not the level. Okay, you want to see that happening less frequently. That's what I'm critical of. Is that stuff like that it's going to happen, but it's not necessarily happening less frequently than it did a few years ago. That's upsetting.
Yeah, that it's still prevalent. So do you think that Valve has improved at all? I mean, we saw them release a public statement about a lot of the racism issues recently. They did try and reform the DPC. Do you think they're making the right steps, or do you think it's too little too late, or tiny band-aids?
Here's the problem with Valve. Okay, Valve's a company of a lot of incredibly smart people. They are very, very good at software design. Their corporate structure is not set up for a lot of other things. And you've seen other tech firms go through this. You've seen Google go through this, right? When you have a corporate governance structure that's almost completely horizontal, where it's Gabe, Eric Johnson, everybody else. I'm oversimplifying, but that's not that far off. Okay, that's very good at a company that has a lot of creative irons in the fire and is developing products like gaming software. It can be very bad when you're talking about administrating a competitive ecosystem. And I think one of the problems with Valve's actions in the space, and it's really, again, it comes entirely from that structure, is the idea that Valve will stay silent, and they'll stay silent, and they'll stay silent. And when they finally do step in, it's the nuclear option, and it's going to be the nuclear option every time. And that's bad. Okay, we need the racism statement was great, and I thought the emails, if you read through the emails from Eric Johnson to Burning, I think those were like, these are people that really do care about their game. I mean, they give a shit, man. They care about their game, and they care about the players that have contributed over the years. But a week goes by, and there's a big difference between that statement released a week later and that statement released 2 days. I mean, the statement was essentially, we think the right thing happened, because it did.
Yeah.
because it's a young kid in his first LAN making a mistake. He was fined and disciplined by his organization, who was completely clear and upfront with the process and their expectation that that would not happen again. GG. Okay. Valve needed to come out and say, basically right after that, that look, we do not condone racism in any form. We think it's horribly unfortunate that this happened. And if the circumstances had been different and or the organization had not stepped in, that we would have stepped in. And that's it. That's all you need. But the fact that that came a week later instead of a day later, again, it feeds the drama. Okay. And you get a lot of people.
Things happen.
Yeah. It's incentives, man. You get a lot of people who really don't care about the health of the scene, who just love to stoke the fires.
Yeah, and then it grows, and then it was, in this case, it wasn't a nuclear option, but in the case of the ESL DMCing streams and Valve's initial...
In the case of the disqualification from the South American TI qualifiers, in the case of then VGJ Storm at TI getting denied a coach. I mean, again, and the other problem with this model of governance is that you get this pendulum effect where last year the idea was, oh, okay, we have too many events. We have Liquid playing 20 some events, over 200 games on LAN. This year we have only 5 majors. The minors are pretty much dedicated to outside of tier 1 teams. And and yet you're asking teams like Liquid to play online qualifiers less than a month after TI ends. It's the overcorrection, right? That's a problem. And it's the idea that we're reinventing the system every year rather than stepping in with these more incremental changes. I mean, look, we'll talk eventually when we get into some of this other content that we've been talking about between you and me. We're going to talk about, there's a lot to be said right now about the advantages and disadvantages of different competitive structures in different esports titles. And there's a lot to be learned from traditional sports and just by studying incentives. I am not saying that I want Dota 2 to be OWL. I am saying, though, that the system badly needs transparency and it badly needs incremental changes in season rather than, oh, it's after TI, boom, clear the drawing board, and here's how we're doing things this year.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to, kind of lead towards a wrap-up because you're right. We do have other content that we can get more into these topics on. But I do want to, you mentioned it briefly, you are going to be teaching a little, but you still want to be at events. But just so people know, what's on your plate for this year? If you can hint if you're going to be at any events or the content that you want to do, any of those things.
I'll be very frank. I have 0 confirmed event invites as of right now. I am not, that's obviously not something that I'm happy about, but that is something, again, for the people that are looking at being talent in this space, that is something that's going to happen and you have to be ready for it. Fortunately, I have wanted to focus a little more on content creation for quite some time. This is an opportunity to do that. This is an opportunity to explore some other things that I've been thinking about, projects on the business consulting side, which, again, that's a whole different discussion. It can be hard to get paid for that too, right? But it is what it is. And I do, end of the year, I do expect to be back at a few events again. That's something I definitely love to do. It's something I think I have a role, I think, in some of these talent lineups, but there's a lot of idiosyncrasies to it. And, a lot of the people that have burst on the scene in the last year or so and that are enjoying their time in the sun right now are really very, very good themselves. So that's part of the equation. And, there'll be an equilibrium where the new talent is getting a lot of work and where some other people are still going to be worked into the mix as well.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I look forward to seeing more from you.
Well, thank you.
So other people can come and find your great content. You want to give a few shout outs where people can just find everything that you do so that they know, and it'll be in the comments too. Don't worry.
Well, so I put most of my raw stats as they come out of my head up on Twitter at Nahaz Dota. follow me there. I have the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Nahaz Dota, that I put up Stats Don't Lie. All my stuff is going to be, we'll have some written content for you, and all my stuff to be linked through rivalry.gg. You can find that on their website. And again, I'd love to hear people's ideas, because I think there's a lot in esports analytics right now that is becoming possible. We're starting to see some great sites like Winston's Lab, that I believe their creator just got hired away to work Blizzard with Overwatch. But we're seeing analytics take charge across a lot of different esports. We're seeing some very interesting business problems pop up as some of these leagues are debating the relative merits of franchising versus a more decentralized model. And these are all discussions that I want to have. It's a matter of, what do you guys want to see?
All right, well, that sounds good to me. So you guys, you heard him. If you want to go check out more of Nahaz's content, hit up his Twitter and his YouTube, and keep an eye on our website if you want to see articles. Everything is going to be linked in the video description so you can find it easily. Thank you for watching. Please let us know any content you want to see in the future, and keep an eye, because we've got more stuff planned for you. Thanks for watching, guys.